Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about drugs and education and that of becoming an adult, just basically going over the story of my life. And if I could even just help one person or inspire anybody, I think that would be magnificent. So I'm going to start timeline from start, and this is really, really early. I have no conscious memory of the first one, which was when I was like 5 or 6. And this is when my father left his beer sitting around twice. So I had somewhere under 2 beers. What happened was he was drinking a beer and then he left to go to somewhere else and I would have drank the rest of it. And then he was like, "Where did my beer go?" And he opened another one and he did it again and I drank the rest of it again. That's really all I know about that situation. Most of my memories up to the age, or up to grade 4-ish, are very much faded. So first 9, 10 years, I got some here and there, more in the late years. But as a kid, I enjoyed playing baseball, hockey, and watching the two sports. Being a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays and actually the Montreal Canadiens. Toronto Maple Leafs really sucked back then, really, really bad, and it was. And my two best friends in the 1980s were Montreal fans as well. So it was cool to be a Montreal fan back in the 80s and the 90s. It really was fun. I also enjoyed wrestling physically. Just we'd play around. It was pretty cool. I was actually loving school in the math sections and stuff like that. A lot of stuff school was relatively easy for me. I got by and I did really well. I mean, well enough. I was decent, good grades. Video games I enjoyed. Now, at the start of this, we're talking Atari. And then the Commodore 64. Ooh, that was fun. And I played the Nintendo a little bit, but I never owned one. As I got older, I would own a Sega Genesis. That was fun. And cartoons and different shows. But as I would get into high school, of course, those would all fade away, as so many other things would. But as far as drugs would be concerned, and we're going to mainly focus again on that of alcohol in this situation in the early years. Because it was common to have it like faded in our face within the commercials. And in Canada, it was the Labatt's and the Molson, at least amongst the beer. And it was a conflict. Baseball, it was Labatt's that would sponsor the Blue Jays, and Molson would sponsor all the hockey broadcast. Hockey Night in Canada was sponsored by Molson, and Ford with Canada. That was always one of their sponsors back then. And watching hockey on Saturday nights and playing it during the day was kind of fun, actually. But when I get my hands back on, when I was in, we'll say grade 6, 7, and into 8, I'd always be able to have a little bit of beer here and there. Like I think a lot of, at least back then, it seemed like every kid my age was able to do so. And then the odd time, I can remember, I don't even know if I drank this night. I might have. It was a Halloween, and it was in the 1980s. This is when like Nightmare on Elm Street was on, like, gotta be around number 3. And we had like 2 or 3 scary movies, including Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And I was probably in grade 7 around this time. 6, because I know I had a crossover of main friends in the grade 6, 7, 8 area that would change over into high school. And then at the end of high school, I had another one. And it's just part of life. I think a lot of people have, especially with schools. And when you get separated amongst your friends from different schools, that was a big reason there. So now the grade 8 graduation. And this is when it would all really begin. So I don't think I've ever been that drunk in any conscious time at this point. But this night I would. For the person who I hung a lot of time with throughout the school years. Well, we were in the same class from grade 1, or maybe even kindergarten, but I can't remember all of my classmates then, but all the way up until grade 9. He was in my class. He was in my class, and really shortly after this time, we really parted ways. But anyway, within this, we decided throughout the day. It was like afternoon. We were at a hangout spot, and we were able to pick up alcohol, which 12 years old maybe. It was just, this is the first time this ever happened to me, where just through going to a store, hey, can you pick some up? And we were getting like, I think it was a 6-pack and then something else. It was, well, pretty cool. So anyway, it's nighttime, and the school was 2 blocks from my house. So we go to the graduation, then we go to the party in the gym, but we crashed the party. We're only there for like an hour and a half, if even that. And then we just cruise around town, and we already have the party place set up, and I got relatively drunk that night. And well, that's the first memory that I have. And as I move into high school, life gets much, much different. Now, grade 9 was a nightmare. First off, I had to take a bus to school. I didn't like that. I had to do so also, but you know what? I had to take a bus in grades 6, 7, and 8 as well. It just happened to be the place where the graduation in grade 8 was at, where my school was grades 1 through 5, which was a 5-minute walk to school. But it was a complete nightmare. School was really, I hated it. It was the atmosphere, having to be, the portables, the rooms we were in. As far as the surroundings, there was a Tim Hortons and McDonald's nearby, so that was fine. And I barely passed science, and there was a teacher that was it was awful. It was awful. I got like 57, 58%. Like the worst. I mean, this is the worst grade I've ever got. I killed it in English, and when I say I killed it in English, I got close to 80%. And I struggled throughout my years within such. And my math classes were fine. I mean, they always were. For the most part, I crushed many math classes. And I have a painting 10 feet away from me that I have. I got 16 or 15 out of 20 on it, so I got 75%. It's just leaves, but I suck at art. I really do. But it was fun though, and when you're in school, you don't want to do classes that suck, especially in high school, because it was a different atmosphere. And the schooling was fine, but the students, it was some of the students. I mean, you've seen some culture changes of people with the hairstyles that were just, I've never seen this before, is all you were thinking. And now I'm starting to rarely go find different party situations where I can get away with it, because the whole point of this is not getting caught. I do not want to get caught. I really can't remember ever having any major one until the completion of grade 9, which would have been the summer and late summer as I'm about to enter grade 10. And this one was from my sister, who is a few years older than me. She would have been 3 grades higher than me. And I go to a place that has wicked parties, and oh my goodness, was it magnificent. But this was an interesting experience, because also with me was our cousin as well. And I'm to stay at my cousin's house with, of course, my aunt would be living there as well. So I'm going there, and I'm like, I've never been this drunk. I threw up, and I opened up the car, and right in the gas station, I just vomited. It was a fun experience. I can still remember having my leg hit the shin of some sort of pipe, and I could barely feel the pain. And I think I might have felt it days after it. But what I remember is, oh my goodness, I'm going to my aunt's house, and I have never been caught drinking, at least not by my mom or my dad, or like, this is not going to be good. And well, she's used to her daughter, who's the same age as my sister, pretty much, and I'm like, oh, so she's fine with us being drunk. Okay, this is good. So Around the same time, I had a nightmare in school in grade 9, so I switched schools. Okay, grades 10 to 13 is what that should say as I have the new slide up. And during that time after the drinking binge I had that one night, I was talking with my sister. I think it was at that time like how much I really hated this school. Now she went to a different school and was moving into grade 13 herself as I was moving into grade 10. And I went to the school she went to. It was a much nicer school, and I finished off my high school rank. Classes, I passed them with ease. So some I struggled with, but not many. More freedom. And you notice that when you moved into grades 11 and 12, how you're able to take classes that you liked. And I mean, computer programming, yeah, I want to take that. I mean, I was a master computer programmer, at least I thought, as I was in grade 9. I had a Commodore 64, so I learned how to program there, and it was pretty much the same language code, just a few changes here and there, so it was really easy. It was fun. And change of interest in life. You noticed how there's a lot of different things coming in as you were getting older. Like you don't watch cartoons anymore, and some of the shows you watch just are like, I mean, really? I watched that? Okay. So anyway, yeah, you start to notice a lot more maturity. And now, days and age of playing baseball games, I'll still play, but I no longer join leagues anymore. Hockey, I'm not playing road hockey 4 days a week, 5 days a week as much, but I still do it. I'm starting to play maybe some poker games here and there, and you see there's always a change of interest that appear along the way. I wasn't the most popular of people in school, although I had a lot of interesting associates, and I really never had any friends. The friends that I had a good friend from the start of school from I can remember. I went to a school up to grade 9. And the reason I went to this school in grade 9 is because my two good friends went to that school. And I didn't like the school. That was a school I already went to back in a few years before. And it was not as bad then, but anyway, I obviously, the first friend that I ended up on the grade 8 graduation drinking with, we really lost touch as I was moving into grade 10. My other friend, which was from grade 6, where he joined my school, we became really good friends, and we really maintained that way all through high school, despite being in different schools from grades 10 through, I don't know if he took 13 or not, but right when grade 12 happened is we stayed good friends. We visit on different weekends, all that type of stuff. He'd go to my place, I'd go to his place. Those were always great times, and he never really drank as much, but he would casually. So I think once or twice we got on a little bit of a drinking binge, but he was a really good role model compared to my first friend, which is something that he was a really good guy. Let's put it that way. And then but the friend that I would pick up again would start to be like your local people, non-school friends, basically. That's what I had as I was moving into school, is just everyone was associates there. And you'd find more parties back at the day and age. It was more common on a Friday or Saturday night to go to a house, there's 60, 80 people, and the place was just an utter mess at the end. And even once, my sister did this. She just hosted a big one. It was like, oh my goodness. And here I am. And this was near the end of this time frame. Around grade 13 even, maybe. Grade 12, 13, because I was working. And a party was set. And, I mean, I didn't drink much because I knew I had to work the next morning. And I had to work at, it would have been 8 o'clock a.m. when my shift would have started for a 12-hour shift. And the place was just an utter mess. And I probably had a bad day at work. I mean, why did I even drink before? But you know what? I did. And what I did is I went to school until grade 13, strategically. Because near the end, you're going to schools. I mean, grade 11 and 12. I mean, it's almost like you're getting it's a big difference between, at least back in the 90s, it was a big difference between grade 12 and grade 9. And grade 9 was a big difference compared to middle school and so on. And I realized that for school, okay, tuition's $1,000. That's the simple one right there. And at least back then it was. And then you got your rent, and you have your expenses. Okay. So I figured if I could work an extra year, which I did, I would be able to pick up extra funds. And I think I was fortunate to only have associates at work as well, because I really didn't party too much when I was working, because I was just obsessed with seeing how many $400 to $500 weekly paychecks I could pull in. And I've never made this kind of coin before. Now back then, what they had in East Ontario schools is they had a 13th grade. If you needed to go to university, you had to get so many credits. So I thought, you know what? There's 4 semesters. Why don't I just, considering for me to work, I had to go to school and be at least, I think it was like, and have a high school diploma. So at grade 12, I had my high school diploma. I probably got drunk that night. I mean, most likely, it wasn't like grade 8, wasn't like my grade 8 grad, because I don't have many memories of grade 12, which means that nothing big would have happened. I mean, there was times I remember in grade 12, I was yelling at the leaves after I raked them, because, man, I spent 2 or 3 hours raking the leaves one day, and then it got really windy and rainy, and then they're all over the place. It's like, man, it's just what alcohol does to you. But, yes, so we do this extra year. I go to school 1 year later than most people do today. And now let's talk about a recipe for disaster. I wish I would have waited 1 more year, maybe a better game plan. But I'm 18 years old, almost 19, and I'm living on my own for the first time. I've already paid for my tuition, and I've already paid for my rent for several months. I have a fridge full of food, and I have a bank account with several $1,000s in it. Well, well over 1,000, I'll say. I need to have cash. I'm not going to get much work. All I can do for work now that school's time, is if they have a shift open for me for like a 12-hour shift on a Friday or a Saturday night, usually Saturdays, I could come in, work a midnight shift, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., and then get well over $100. Well over. We're talking closer to probably closer to $200 or whatever it was. It was significantly over $10 an hour. Back then, it was $12.44 an hour. Plus, a lot of times when I was working, there was ways of getting time and a half, and then you got premiums on nights. It worked out to getting $400 or $500 paychecks easy, oftentimes, and getting overtime back then was easy. So therefore, getting alcohol, having 5 roommates, 3 guys and 2 girls. The 2 guys are about, 3 of them. One's 21-ish, one's 20, one's 24, and both the females are 19, and I'm 18. And I also have my sister who's a few floors above me. She lives in the same building as well. And I also know a few other people. It wasn't hard to get alcohol. It was downright easy. And then when I was able to get it, it was much easier than that when I turned 19. The mainstream media also did a very good job throughout all my years up to this point in teaching me that because a drug is legal, I guess you could do it, because I'm drinking too much alcohol at this time. And I'm now, for the first time ever, smoking something with black tar on it, which of course would be oil, and other, of course, similar kind of things. and they were interesting experiences as well. But I don't have anything too amazingly other than it was fun back then. Interestingly, I have never in my life, despite how my next few years are going to go from this point on, at least many, many months anyway, I have never remembered ever seeing cocaine ever, or anyone doing it, anyone holding it. And I have been in many situations where I should have. I find that very interesting, and I'm never in a situation now where I probably should, but it'll be interesting if that will stay that way. But I obviously drank a lot. I went too far. I had nights where I drank over 20 bottles of beer, several gallons or several pitchers, and I might have done a lot of problems that have led me into the future. But of course, at this age, you don't know it. And the fun when you are having it's a blast at this stage. I'm enjoying every minute. Having music blast. I mean, you learn parties 4 nights a week. Thursday nights, okay, maybe Mondays and Tuesdays you don't really drink much, but Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, I think Wednesdays might have been one of them. I can't remember. And of course, that is part of living life on your own for the first time. Now, as far as school was concerned, I didn't last too long because I barely passed. I passed every single class. But there was a lot of 50, 60, 64%, and that made my GPA not good enough to continue, which is grade point average. And in high school, I mastered how to pass every class because to this point, I had never, ever failed a class. But this was a costly experience. I got no status of continuing further. I spent all of this coin to go, all this party money, and I got to start over. So after the next year would come into place, 1 year later, as we enter into 1995, I decided to go to another school that is not so far away and think, okay, if I don't pay room and board, which back then I didn't, but I pay for all the expenses I need to for school, like tuition, which is now up to like $1,200. And now I'm going to have to pay for all of these transportation costs. It's getting expensive. But when you throw out the rent costs and you compare it to the cost of traveling 40 miles, 45 miles per way, it's better. But it also makes you not drink as much, that is. As far as schooling was concerned, let's just say, I mean, I did well. I did well. And then as far as the drinking, on a few weekends, yeah, you got splurged. You splurged. You're getting older. It's easier now, especially when you're turning 20. It's getting to the point now where it's not as exciting, but it's still good. It's still good. I mean, you have to do it at a good time, but I can now be able to drink one or two, or it's a lot easier compared to back then. That's something that I like. And what was cool was being able to, in the school year, oh, we got like U.S. Thanksgiving. Oh, there's football. Oh, it's Friday. Or no, I didn't go to school on Fridays, in this semester too. Or maybe it's just one day where I've got to wait for someone to finish their class 2 hours. So I'll go to the pub at school and I'll drink a couple, maybe 3 max beers. And I was good at that. And I maybe that was an improvement. But I felt it was coming on pretty good. And the year ended, I dominated a lot of classes. In fact, there was one exam in which I only went to like 2. I went to only tests and exams. That was it. Which is why I didn't go to school Friday. That was one of the 2 classes I had. The other one I could afford to miss and all that. And it was assignment hand-in day, which I just did on Thursdays. But That's why I went. It was fun. But anyway, after school ended, that means it's moving forward. Now, several weeks after the final exam, and I was feeling really sick the last few weeks before the school year ended. When my doctor tells me to go to hospital for surgery. And how long? How long after he decided? Emergency. Let's just say I had surgery 2 hours, 3 hours later. And the recovery time, well, it hasn't recovered. 22 years and counting. And when this occurred, there was many, many months away. So at first, I wasn't too concerned. I figured, okay, this kind of works out that I should be fully recovered by the time September rolls along. Oh man, OSAP is all I'm thinking, which is Ontario Student Loan. I'm going to have to, for the first time, go into debt. I've never had debt before. I don't want to do debt. I really didn't. I didn't want to do it. And I was unable to when the time came. I wish I could have went into the next semester, but I was physically unable to. And as we moved on and the healing process would come into play, there really wasn't any drinking during this healing process. In fact, there was none at all. I was basically on the couch all the time. I had, for probably 5 to 6 consecutive weeks, a nurse come to my house every single day until I was able to attend to the situation at that point, and it was not good. And this is now when I have a new drug. It's called painkillers, and well, since that time, that has been a constant issue. As it stands today, I have not had an alcoholic drink since December 31st, 2000. And I haven't had a painkiller in 5 days. So it's at the point where I barely take them, but I cannot not take them. So several months after this September period came into place, came the recovery. There were many hospital visits and further surgeries that were done. But since then, I haven't had surgery since any major surgery since 1997. And I still was at the point I can remember during 97 and 98 with friends just around the area of people that live in your street neighborhoods, of going to parties, going to different bars at situations, and not as often, and I felt the price more often than not. Working, well, I usually had some sort of job, and a lot of people do. In fact, this is the time frame in which I probably had about 9 different jobs, 10 different jobs, and they were all minimum wage, like working at a gas station and all that type of stuff. School, I went to working in private and homeschooling, stuff like that. In fact, that's when I failed for the first time, when I did the CGA, because the certified accountants. When I went for a certified accountants, I did the first, and I didn't even pass the first module. Basically, I failed it bitterly bad. I didn't like it at all. So that was it for me in accounting. Then the internet came into place, and I'm living life of pain, but I'm handling it at this point. It's cool because I'm actually meeting new people throughout the internet as well. And now I go from having the school friends from all the way up to the first 9 grades. Well, we're at least 8 grades, but yeah, 9 grades. Then the childhood friends, which are still in existence here, but now I'm adding in internet friends. The furthest one was never too far. It was only a couple 100 miles, but I met probably a dozen different people, most of them women, and some of them, of course, would of course translate into such, because I had a hard time actually even within that situation until, of course, the internet came along. And this take here, now I am a veteran college student. I'm a lot more mature. And I'm going to college, taking computer programming. And if I would have taken programming that I wanted to take, the languages I was more familiar and I wanted to go more advanced upon such, I probably would have done well. And even though it was screwed over, I think I still would have had a very difficult time. And I say that because the college set up the structure of the program very badly, where literally 80-90% of the field or class failed. But I literally failed like every class almost. Literally, it was that bad. At least the second semester. First semester, I passed it with flying colors. That's how bad the second semester they screwed us over. Not only was, I lost my motivation. So the first semester, I was a great student. I was having a lot of fun. Second semester, I was playing video games. I'm like, screw this whole college deal. And I partied, but I didn't drink alcohol really. In fact, it got to the point where, like when I was in school before, it was easy to get alcohol. And it's easy for me to get alcohol now. Big time. It's not hard to get it. And I can go to any bar. And sometimes I went to the bar and had a couple drinks. And with a few of the friends, it was good. But that's the only time I really drank was when I was with my girlfriends at the time, or girlfriend then at the time. That was about it. I think one time I bought like 6 Mike's Hardcore lemonades, and this was maybe when I first got there, and then maybe like 6 weeks later, there's still 4 in the fridge, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to this party. This is where I met this girl, and then I brought them with me, kind of deal. It was, I was like, why do I want to drink? I'm going to get sick, so I might as well just control it. And I was controlling it really well. I was adding like other medicines, like over-the-counter ones at this stage. And of course, there was other things you would smoke that I would be adding in here and there as well. Of course, we're talking marijuana, and that's with a lot of people. So the drugs have obviously changed within my life. I got very good at the game StarCraft Brood War. It was available in the computers. So I played a little bit in the first semester because I can control internet and gaming with my education, and I did really well. But it got so hard that I was like failing everything, and then I just pretty much was like, I knew as I was like halfway into the second semester that I was gonna fail. And I knew a lot of people else were too, because you could just tell. We were all talking about how screwed. We petitioned the whole thing. It worked out that we'll let you redo it over again. We have to, but you still have to pay for it. I was like, screw that. This would be a mistake for me to do it again. So I'm done college now. And that leaves the last 18 years. The working world, debt, pain and recovery of the debt. For physically, pain gets worse for me. In fact, I've had a neurological disorder that I've recently discovered that is, I had no chance but to, obviously it's going to affect the fact that I'm going to have a hard time walking as I move forward. But what I experienced was working and barely surviving to the point where you'd have major debt problems. And that is a situation where you're in your own economic collapse for like 1+ years, 1.5 years. It was like life was spiraling out of control. And the only thing that made it fortunate with having very difficult work jobs and getting side jobs on the side was that I was able to get good at poker. And in such, as we move today, that's basically how it's played. On December the 31st, I didn't work that night. They gave me the night off, so I went to a New Year's Eve party. I got really drunk, and I played Asshole, which is a card game, really badly. I'm a really good card player. And I didn't say, well, this is the last time I'm going to drink, but like 6 months later, I'm like 8 months later, man, why do I don't never just drink again. I never said I'm going to quit drinking. It's just in 99, I barely drank because it already basically killed my stomach so bad and other parts of the body that has caused an infinite amount of, not an infinite, but a continuous amount of pain since, of course, that original surgery date over 20 years ago. I've had to take painkillers just to do things, go go working so many times. In fact, I can remember one time. This is one of my big trips that I had on drugs. I was in my mid 20s, and I basically tell my boss literally like the morning of the night I have to work. I mean, there's no way I can physically even come into work because the painkillers I would need to take are just going to knock me out. I mean, that's the only way I'm going to survive. This was Demerol at this stage. And I took a little larger of a dose than normal. And I end up sleeping, and I wake up, and it's probably, I don't know, maybe 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock maybe, and I have got this amazing buzz. I'm in so much pain that I cannot even barely walk due to the pain. Yet I'm running around. I take a run to one of my stores. I buy some fun stuff because I am watching the Arizona Diamondbacks defeat the New York Yankees to win the World Series. And it was a very beautiful game, at least high on Demerol it was. But then games like the New England Patriots, when they defeated the Oakland Raiders, drugs knocked me out that night. I don't know if it was due to the marijuana, which I was adding more at that time, or if it was due to pain medicines. But I really wish I would have watched the second half and overtime of that game when it was originally played. But I got knocked out by the drugs, that was. I even once had someone come up to me and said, "Oh, by the way, I got some stuff that's ranked number like 4 on High Times from BC, British Columbia. It's a little bit of a high price, but not much, like maybe 20-30% more than you would be going for, and oftentimes. And I mean, you get like buzzes that you can remember that you never have before, but you realize that a lot of it has transitioned because when you originally try other drugs that actually give you a different type of buzz feeling you once enjoyed through alcohol, but this time you're doing something that would relieve a lot of the pain, at least to a degree, but it would cause different other problems because throughout my whole life I always had different types of stresses, which I have eliminated amazingly since 2008. I don't really stress over much, but it's really being very less emotional. I've trained myself not to get too pissed off or not to stress out over things when it's negative, but on the contrary, not to get too excited when positive stuff happens as well. And now it just seems like everything's Groundhog Day, which is why the videos are pretty much like the same every day. And Groundhog Day referring to a Bill Murray movie where every day was the same. And every day is just like at this point. And I mean, for the last 5-10 years, they're not. You move to different places, or at least you move once. You go into crypto trading, and you have a period where you do different things here and there at a fantasy sports. These were just different ways of making income on the side. Some didn't work out, which meant that cryptos came at a good time. Let's just put it that way. And that's basically the story. Now I'm at the point where just every day I just go through each point and I realize that I enjoy each day, but I feel limited in the stuff I can do. And I realize that had I known what the issue was, and I realized there were other things like I could have ate a lot of better foods than I did, especially when you had more freedom to eat foods you can choose yourself, especially when you can afford to eat practically anything you wanted when you have funds. That's one of the scary things when you're used to always having money, which basically since I turned for the most part, yeah, ever since I started working in a factory when I was like 16 or 7, whatever years old, whenever I first graduated grade 12, I've always been used to having money with the exception of a couple years. And then for 4, 5, 6 years, at least, at worst, 5 or 6 years of just barely hanging in there where it's like, oh my goodness, your paycheck barely gets you by. I mean, you really have, I could only eat out like 2 times. I lived that for so many years. But obviously through school, you always I mean, you didn't need to have much money when you were in grade 5, 6, 7, 8, but each grade you got further, you did. And when I started out being, and even in school, it was easy for me to make money back then. It was easy. So I've always had money in high school and grade school. It was never a point where I really had to work hard just to get even small. I mean, at least for small, normal amounts, it was always there. And then when I mean, there's always income available when and even well, I mean, when you're working, I didn't really try to find side jobs, but it was always easy to do that as well. But when I started working after, like, basically when I started working after I got sick, it was literally just you only made a little bit, like minimum wage or small, decently above it, like 20, decently is like 20, 30%. And I had one point where I had really high paying job and it really hurt me physically. I went to a factory again, not when I was like 18, 19, no, but when I'm like, how old would I have been? Like almost like late 20s. And that really was what really did me in physically, I think, too. So I left a job that was like barely making it hang in there for a job where I got like easily have so much fun now because I'm getting like 200 plus bucks more a week than I need, whatever. I can have a lot of fun. And you know what? You pay for that too. Anyway, have yourself a great day. Bye bye.